So the next thing I wanted to show you in this horizon are the roots. And you can see up in the AH layer, there's a lot of roots penetrating down into the system. And this is definitely an observation you need to make in the field because you'll be cutting through those roots in order to get down into these systems, but you can still see there are pieces of root all the way down until we get to this white layer at the bottom. I don't think these roots went that far. I think they're stopping. In the field, this was a harder layer. This was all quite soft sand, and this was a compacted layer that we had to really cut with our shovel. And we had roots throughout this whole system. So these are very fine roots mostly. There are a few larger ones here and there, but we don't have any coarse. Like those are big, like this, if it was a root, this is leaf litter, but if it was a root, that would be coarse. They're pretty, like, because it goes very fine is less than a millimeter, medium is 2 to 5 millimeters. Like these guys are fine. They're 1 to 2 millimeters, pretty easy to spot. And I would say they're plentiful. There's quite a few through here. Maybe you'd say few. Unlike with models, there doesn't seem to be a picture to refer you to, just how many you have. So like if you have one coarse root that's larger than 5 millimeters, that's few. If you have more than 5, that's abundant. I think we have fine roots, and there's definitely more than 10. Is there more than 100? I don't know, I don't want to count them, but I'm going to guess that there's less than 100, so they're plentiful. Other things you can notice about your roots is orientation. Are they going vertical or horizontal? This is another thing to look in the field. Most of these roots were going down, vertical. Some of them were a little bit random, or a lot of them were oblique, the ones that are at angles, right? Vertical, horizontal, oblique. And then you also want to see if they're in ped or ex ped, growing around the peds or through the peds. And an easy way to see that is by picking up a few roots and see if any peds come with them. Oh, that one's in ped. I got a ped when I pulled up that root. But it seems that most of them are ex ped. They're not growing through the roots. So maybe that's a situation where in the AH layer, they're actually in ped, and maybe a little bit into the AE, but once we get down into the more mineral layers, they're ex ped. While we're talking about roots, we should probably talk about pores. This is a very sandy, granular sample, so seeing pores is difficult, but in some columnar or certain samples, you can see pores within your peds, and you can look to see if those holes, those pores, have any kind of orientation or distribution. I don't have any to show you, so I'm just going to keep moving on. Next up in the lecture, we talk about all the different sort of more random horizon features that a lot of horizons don't have, but specific ones do. Things like clay films. If you have clay films, you might have slick and slides, you might have verticil. Concretions. In podzols, you sometimes get these hard concretions. And I haven't found any yet, and I've been digging around in here. So we probably don't have any, but you could have pieces of soil that have been cemented together and they look like a ped, but then when you try to smush them, they won't smush. And you take a hammer to them and you see they've been cemented into a rock almost. Those are concretions. You could have areas that look like they're salted, like white fungus growing on them almost. Salts and carbonates are when you get these chemical minerals that get dissolved and then reform, recrystallize. And then coarse fragments, we do get those sometimes. It's when, and I haven't found any in here yet, but it's when you have like larger than sand rocks and pebbles. So we did look at one soil profile by a waterway that had fluvial deposits of coarse fragments that were round pebbles of varying sizes, some of them quite large. And there's size classes when you're describing those coarse fragments that have a chart. All of these different horizon characteristics have specific charts you should refer to when you are counting and recording them. For example, the coarse fragments have a chart that looks like this that you will have in your lecture. And it's to help you estimate what percent of your soil are coarse fragments. One of my favorite things about coarse fragments is the terminology, because depending on whether they're small or big or chunky or flat, you have words like cherty and angular cobbly and stony and flaggy and bouldery. So around here we typically get gravelly or cobbly, sometimes stony coarse fragments, which are irregularly shaped, rounded stones and pebbles that are in your sample. And if they're angular, then you get angular gravelly, angular cobbly. So it's definitely hard to remember them all and worth having a chart in front of you when you're looking to record them.